So we're going to really get a lot of great information today. So first, I'm going to give you guys a couple of announcements. As always, if you'll stay till the end, we're going to have door prizes. And so if you can stay as long as you can. If you have to leave, you might shoot us a little message in the text box or the chat box so we know that you're leaving. And for those of you that, sorry, I'm trying to find, I heard someone beeping. There they are. I couldn't find them. Okay, so we're also in 2 weeks having another Lunch and Learn. And I had to make sure I had the name right. Her name is Diana Hernandez, and she is the specialist that works with children with disabilities for the department. So she's going to be talking to us about how we can better advocate for children with disabilities. So that's going to be very informative, and that'll be going out to you in a day or so. As always, if you have questions, you can put them in that chat box or you can write them down so that you don't forget. And then at the very end of the presentation, Deborah will take live questions. But just don't forget, as we're going along, I also emailed you guys out the notes, her slide presentation, and a couple of handouts on foster care consortium and college foster care liaison list for 2020. And we did not have that most updated list, Deborah, so that was a great one to provide for us. So she's just going to talk to us about all those things. You're going to get a lot of great information today. As always, I'll record it. So if you feel like you're missing something, don't worry. We'll send out the link at the end of today so that everyone will have access to that. So I talked about Deb's vast experience. She is a former elementary education teacher, and then she made that career change to work for CPS 35 years ago. So she has, when I say a wealth of information, she has seen CPS go through all the changes multiple times, right, Deb?
Yes.
So she has survived it all. She guides and directs so many, and we really do rely on her for so much information and for guidance. So guys, give me a nice round of applause for Deb and thank her for coming to join us today. And Deb, I'm going to let you share your screen and let you take over.
Okay, thank you so much. I've got to figure out how do I do this? I guess so, like this.
Yeah, at the bottom you should see the share.
At the bottom of what?
Of your little screen.
Okay, let me go back to the deal. And where does it say share?
Well, your screen might look different than mine. Mine is if I kind of go to the bottom of my video.
I see share screen, share.
And then when you
that got it?
There you go.
Okay, I'm learning something new every day.
And then if you'll click on that little presenter thing on the very bottom, that single screen on the right.
Okay, I'm not.
Where it says notes. And then you see the 4 little buttons. Yes, the one on the right. If you'll click that one on the right, keep going. Keep going.
Slide sorter.
Keep going.
Reading view.
There you go.
Slideshow. Right there.
There you go.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir today. I just cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed working with the CASAs across Region 2 who help our kids. We had a CASA in Region up in the Wichita Falls area where we had a young lady several years ago, and her mother got upset with the school and withdrew her from school as the 4th grader. We removed her when she should have been going into the 7th grade. So that was 3 years without any public education. Her CASA was able to log on to her parent portal, check her grades every day for me, and every Friday we talked about how that student was doing. We had meetings with the school. It was just an incredibly wonderful experience. And I know I've been working with several other CASAs on some cases recently. Y'all are just amazing, and I can't say enough good about all that you do. So thank you. That's the way I want to start out. Okay, my role as the education specialist is to support the needs of the students of kids who are in out-of-home care. I can talk to FBSS people about how to work with their families while the child's case is in FBSS. I cannot advocate for those children because CPS does not have conservatorship. So normally I refer those students and the students who return to parents when we get out of a case to something called the Parent Education Network or something along that line where they can have some supports from other organizations who can help them. I can participate in ARD meetings, 504 meetings, circles of support, permanency conferences, parent-teacher conferences. I make referrals sometimes for students to be tested for special ed. I also coordinate with stakeholders to support the consortiums and community training. In the community training, I can do I know in the past, Connie Mangan always did your surrogate parent training. I'm working real closely with Terry Reese now and really have enjoyed both of them in the past. Our consortium here in the Big Country, it's called Big Country Foster Care Consortium. And we meet twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. I have one in Brownwood, which is the oldest consortium in Texas. And then I have another one in Wichita Falls through Region 9. The Big Country Consortium is going to meet, and you'll be getting an email about this probably in a few days. On October 29th, we are working with a group called Abilene Research, I believe is what it's called. They help with drugs for, we were talking about how many of our students now are removed due to drugs. And so we wanted more information. What's the most common street name for drugs? How do the students hide the drugs? So we're going to have a 9-to-1 training via Zoom like this on October the 29th. So if you'd like to participate in that, please let me know and we'll make sure that you get that invitation. This is kind of the training that I do with new workers. So I wanted to kind of pass this along to y'all and then talk to you about questions that you're having with the children on your caseloads. 2085 forms, there's two of them, an education decision maker, 2085E, and a 2085 placement form. CPS asked the schools several years ago to start PEIMS coding the students that were in foster care. The only way they know to PEIMS code our student is when they get a 2085 placement form. Due to confidentiality, there's not a lot of other ways that they can know who our students are. When this first came out, the schools started calling me and saying, give me a list of all the kids that are in our school that are in foster care. I wish I could do that, but I can't. And so we try to work real closely with the schools to make sure, number one, they get that 2085 form, because number 4 on that form is also their free lunch application. It prevents the caregiver from having to apply for free lunch. So our student automatically gets that. The children have to be enrolled within 2 days of being placed with a caregiver. So if you talk to a caregiver or a student that has been with the caregiver 2 weeks and the student's still not enrolled, please give me a heads up. We need to get that student in school. So right now, currently we have, and I looked this up this morning, 786 school-age children in Region 2 in foster care, 786. So if I get an email asking, you know, how Zach is doing in school, I need to know Zach's name because I may have several Zacharies on my workload. I don't work with all 786 of those children, but the workers or CASA or anyone can make a referral to me for assistance if we've got a student that is really struggling in school. The 2085E is a great form. I'm so glad we have it. It tells the school who the primary education decision maker is. It really should not be the caseworker. It should be the primary person should be the caregiver. The caseworker can be the backup, but they're not going to be able to make every school meeting for a child like a caregiver would, who's got probably, 6 or under children in their home. On that 2085E form, it also talks about special education. Anyone who has a paid position cannot represent a student as a surrogate or in for special education purposes. So if we have children placed at Harmony or at Audrey Grace, they have to have a surrogate appointed for them to represent if they're in special education. So because the people that work at Harmony and at Audrey Grace are paid positions. If you've got a child in a foster home, the foster parent should be able to act as the representative for the child in special ed, but they have to have that surrogate parent training. They can either, from the day they're appointed, they have till the next ARD or within 90 days, whichever comes first, to get that surrogate parent training. I can give the training, someone at the service center can give the training, or someone from the school district can provide the training. There is an online training form that can be done through Region 9 Service Center. And I'd be okay with that. I think the thing with having someone in person is you get to have that dialogue and you get to ask questions. So if there's any time that y'all need that training, I'd be able to work with you on individuals if the school districts could not. Whoever takes that training should have a certificate to provide to the school. It's only required one time that you take the training, but you do need that certificate. And I know a lot of the CASAs are trained as surrogates, and that's a wonderful thing. Because if you've got a child from the Abilene area who ends up in Beaumont or in the Metroplex, you're going to be the one with the most knowledge and background of that student. So I think that's a wonderful thing when CASA can represent their student, especially when they're in an RTC or a shelter. So let's see, let's get to pre-K. Our students should be eligible for pre-K if they're 3 on or before September 1 of the school year. So, and there's a pre-K letter that goes out to the school districts. The schools also have to PIMS code students in foster care who are in pre-K. I didn't realize this till we did our PIMS training at the consortium last week. So we can give them a pre-K letter after they're in our conservatorship as a result of an adversary hearing. So if we've got a parent who works FBSS cases, but we never take custody of their child, they do not get a pre-K letter. The child does not. Now, because the state of Texas doesn't mandate that the school have a 3-year-old pre-K program, we can put our students on a waiting list if they call and the school says they're full. Once the student is 4 on or before September 1, though, the schools cannot put them on a waiting list, and they've been wonderful to work with us on that. So if you know that you've got a student that you're working with or a family and they're 3 or they're 4 and they're not in school, we need to be questioning the caregiver and the caseworker as to why they're not attending a public school. Our policy does say that if they're in a daycare that has a curriculum or with a caregiver who wants to provide curriculum, that they can remain home, but it needs to be documented. And there is a difference. Our workers struggle with knowing the difference between Head Start and pre-K. Head Start is a federal program. And so if they say we're full when we call to get our child enrolled in Head Start, they're full. And there's nothing we can do except put our children on a waiting list. So we really do want those students. A lot of my workers will say, you don't need to sit in on this meeting. Their kids are not school age, they're 3. Well, they really are school age. And so I try to always stress that to our workers. If they start school at 5, they're probably behind their peers. So we need to make sure our 3 and 4-year-olds are enrolled in school. That crazy little green education notebook, it looks like this. I've got one right here handy. All over the state of Texas, our students should all have a green education portfolio. Once they come, when this was originated, I bet 15 years ago at least, they saved the word passport for when they can finally get the education information uploaded online. We're hoping that'll happen any day now, because those green notebooks seem to get lost from one placement to another. I bring all because you have the right to look at that green notebook when their certificate, their social security card, their withdrawals, their immunization records, all of that should be in that education notebook. I pull up their STAR scores once we do a removal staffing and try to send those to the workers so those can go in there. Why are they important? Because I pulled up one for a student who was 17. I think he was a senior not long ago. He was fixing to move. He had never passed a STAR score ever since 3rd grade, ever. I know, Jane, that's what I did. You know, somebody help this kid. And then I pulled up who had absolutely a perfect score in reading. And then I pulled up one the other day who had mastered reading, writing, and I mean, all 3 of the subjects he took that day. We know those students are going to be, they need to be followed. Do they fall into the gifted and talented? Are we going to be able to stimulate them enough and provide them enough information to keep them motivated in learning? We've got some bright kiddos out there and they need to be challenged sometimes. So let me know if you ever have any questions about those green notebooks, or if you ask to see one and the caregiver says we don't have one, then I'll be glad to try to track down and make sure they get one. Schools must comply with FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which protects the privacy of students' records. We have the right as CPS now to look at those records, as do you. Federal law has required child welfare agencies to keep accurate educational records for every school-age child. So it's a task for us to kind of gather those records and make sure we have them. But y'all also have the right to look at those records. I'm constantly answering questions from the schools on what can CASA do. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the Big Country Consortium got started, was because I had a lot of people inquiring when CASA first came up about what role does CASA play in the right life of a child. Well, you play a big role, and we try to pass that along to the schools, that you can act very, you have an important role with our students, and I appreciate that. I also try to let the schools know and our caseworkers that every student has an attorney ad litem, and that if we have a school meeting, the school needs to know if that attorney ad litem is going to be present at the ARD meeting. School that requested an ARD because we were fixing to do a monitored return. Mom had an attorney, we had an attorney, and so I asked for an ARD meeting or a school meeting. It wasn't even an ARD meeting. I think it was a school meeting, and told them who all was going to be present. And the principal got very upset. Why was an attorney coming? So I tried to explain to her. I didn't do a very good job, because 5 minutes later I got a call from the superintendent wanting to know why we were having a meeting with several attorneys wanting to be present. I guess I didn't do a very good job explaining to him either, because a few minutes later the school's attorney called me, and he just laughed, and he said, I know that it makes the schools nervous when attorneys show up, but our judges are really asking the attorneys to play big roles for our kids. And so they really are stepping up. And so they're doing a lot with our kiddos. And so we try to let the schools know that our attorney ad litems are important for our kids as well. I think one of the main reasons that the education specialist position was created in Texas, and it was about 2001 or 2002 that they started this position. And at that time, and I don't know, now may still be the only state in the United States that has education specialists for CPS, but our kids move a lot, and y'all know that. Education stability for our kids is one of the biggest things that we need to work on. And I think we've come a long way. One of the handouts that I sent Rebel to send to y'all was from Kelly Kravitz with TEA. And the data shows that our CPS children rank the lowest of any group. They're below homeless. We're the bottom out. I think our graduation rate is 62%, where for the general incredible, I think it's 25%, where the general ed is like 5%. And one of the things that I've tried to tell my workers is, when our kids, we don't want them to age out with nothing, but when we put them into a GED program, the school counts them as a dropout. And so we need to do everything we can to help them graduate before we look at that GED option. So we really, really need to push our kids. I am seeing more kids going on to college than we've seen in the past. When I started with CPS, when a child turned 18, we said goodbye, have a good life. And now we do the circles of support. We try to support them. If they have a disability, we try to make sure they've got a home for the rest of their life, which is what Diana will explain to y'all at your next training. If they're going to college, we want to make sure they've got a dorm. Texas A&M University has made a commitment that they will have a supervised independent living wing or dorm on all of their campuses. And so they're doing a great job. West Texas A&M now has a supervised independent living. The lady said they had 6 students last year. They've got 12 this year. So that's a safe place for them to leave. They have that room through the holidays, through the summer. So the colleges are really stepping up and helping us support our youth once they age out of care. We've come up with a school of origin, where our kids, once they, if they are picked up and they were in Abilene and they were attending Cooper, but we put them in Harmony Shelter, which I think goes with Abilene High, they still have the right to keep going to Cooper. That's their school of origin. And the same thing if they move from foster home to adoptive home or somewhere along that line, that school, the last school they were attending, still becomes their school of origin. Now, if they were in at Cooper and they were a freshman, because that is their school of origin, they have the right to keep going to that school through the highest grade. So that would be graduation, even if we return them home. So if we pick up a student from Austin Elementary and they're in 3rd grade, Austin goes through 5th grade. So they could continue going to Austin Elementary, even through the highest grade of that school building. So we may have some questions on that a little bit later. The ESSA, Every Student Success Act, replaced the No Child Left Behind Act. When that came about a few years ago, we had to come up with an agreement with every school district in Texas that we would try to facilitate transportation for our kids through their school of origin. So that we have no money to do that, but we need to work closely with the schools to make sure transportation is not an issue for our kids to stay in the school of origin. This just talks about seamless enrollment. The school has to enroll our students the day we take them to enroll them, and then give us 30 days to provide them with documentation. Okay, so we need to get their birth certificate or a birth verification. We need to get their immunization records. We should already have their school records from their previous school. All of that should be in that green notebook, that education portfolio, so that the school can make an accurate placement. We also need to make sure our kids don't have excessive absences. You know, it's really hard. We require them to go to counseling. We do drug days where they have their medications reviewed. We pull them out sometimes to go to court. We pull them out for visitation. And so there is an excused absence letter that we can provide the school, but we need our workers and everyone to be aware that our kids still fall under that 90-10 rule. They need to be in school 90% of the number of days with excused absences. And so if you review a report card for one of your kids and you see excessive absences, then we need to be having a meeting with the caregivers and the worker to find out why is our child not in school. I think the most things that the workers get upset about are tardies. If the caregiver gets them there, but they're tardy to several classes, then we need to find out, where's our student going? What are they doing during the day that's causing them to miss their classes or be tardy? So if y'all can be another set of eyes that can check those report cards and make sure that our students are not having excessive absences. I had one school counselor who called because our student had about 10, and they were pulling him out once a week to go to Abilene to counseling. And so he was missing the same classes over and over and over every week. And so we worked to tweak it where he was not missing his core subjects to make sure that he could get his counseling and his academics at the same time. COVID's been a challenge. Oh, bless the schools and the kids. We can ask questions about that later if y'all have some concerns about that. I think it's a real challenge with the RTCs or placements that have several kids, that if somebody gets exposed, then they all have to quarantine. And so that's been a real challenge, I think. One of the new laws, and I need to check with some school people on this because I haven't seen this need to be used, but it deletes the provision that if a student has 3 or more unexcused absences within a 4-week period, he or she is considered truant. So I think the schools would work with us on that. We don't want them coming after our kids for truancy, especially if they're absent for some. We need to find out why they're being absent with those unexcused absences. And there's that 90-10 rule about them being there as much as possible. Every school district in Texas should have a foster care liaison. If you don't know how to find those for the school, if you have a child that's not placed in the Abilene area, you can go under TEA Ask Ted, and it'll pull up, you can pull up the district, and it'll show you, excuse me, who the foster care liaison is for that district. And I can tell you, Abilene ISD has a wonderful liaison in Darren Cox. I can send him an email and something is resolved in a matter of minutes. And I've not run into a foster care liaison that's been difficult to work with yet. They all have a heart for our kids. They all want to help our kids. And because that was so successful, the legislature mandated that every college and university in Texas also has to have a foster care liaison. And that's the list that I sent to Rebel. I sat at a conference with a table of students who were working at the university. Some of them were working on their master's, one was working on their bachelor's, and one was even working on their PhD. And everyone said they would not be where they were had it not been for their liaison at the college, who was keeping activities going for them, trying to find money for them when they were broke or when they couldn't find funding to pay for things at college. Because what the colleges have noticed is that our kids can enroll, but they're not finishing. And so they wanted to know, what can we do to keep these kids enrolled and help them finish and get their degree? And they have stepped up and they're doing a beautiful job. So the liaisons, don't hesitate calling them about our kids. GED, these are things that I have to approve. If we have a student, just like I had a worker call me this morning saying that a student was enrolled in a private school, and she wanted to know who paid the tuition. We don't have money to pay for tuition for a student to go into a private school. So that's an exception that would need to come through me. I'd need to look to make sure the schools are accredited. If we pull them out of the public school, we need to make sure who's educating them. If they're going to go into a GED program, and I tell workers, I won't even consider a 16-year-old for a GED. They have to be close to being 18 and exiting our program with nothing for me to really agree to let them be withdrawn from school to work on their GED. So, but that is an option. We need to look at all options that work for our students so that we can make them successful. Fostering connection is a law. That's one of the laws that helps them stay in their school of origin. So that's just kind of talking about that again. Oh, I'm through with my presentation. The one I do, they give me about 30 minutes, and so I kind of shorten it. But I did want to leave time for y'all to ask questions because, like I said, I feel like so many of you are so well-versed on what to do to help our kids, but we all run into instances where we need some support. So can I answer any questions for you at this time?
And Deb, there's a few in the chat box that we'll look at real quick. Hey guys, write down Deb's email and it'll be on the slides, but write that down real quick before she stops sharing her screen. And when you have questions, she's really good at answering those questions. So try not to bombard her and make her life too miserable, but when you have real questions,
yeah,
get those. Okay, and then I think, Deb, you may have to stop sharing your screen to be able to see the chat box.
Okay.
And then, so at the very top of the chat box, I put a few little notes for people to remind them what art is and all of that. And then David Baum had a question for you. That's another name. Are you familiar with David?
I don't know. I don't know.
He's waving up there. Okay, so his question was, what do we need to do to gain access to Wiley's parent portal?
It'll reach out to their foster care liaison or someone at the campus where your student, like if your student is at Wiley High School, I'd reach out to the counselor at the high school who can help you. Some of the schools tell me they have to let the parent give you an access code. I'm not real sure, but I would reach out to the campus where the student is. But y'all do need to have that access. We need somebody monitoring their grades every day.
What about for AISD? What do we need to do to get that access?
I can ask Darren real quickly after this and forward his answer to you, but I'm, Jane, you might even know that. I'm assuming it's the campus that the student is on, that you'd reach out to that campus.
Okay. And as their guardian ad litem, we do have permission to have access to those. And if they have to have that code, then Darren or the liaison at Wiley would tell us how to get that. So.
Would be able to assist you. They're wonderful to help. If we have kids where they don't want to enroll them in school, the liaisons can make a phone call and explain to them what's going on. And it's taken care of in a matter of a few minutes. Darren
is amazing. I've not had any interaction with Wiley, but Darren is, like you said, he is absolutely amazing.
So. I think Wiley's is Darla. I can't think of her last name right now, but yeah, she's been really good to reach out to.
Good. Well, then Penny Terrell had the question, what about kids in RTCs? What happens to their portfolio, their green portfolio?
It stays in the office, I believe, of the RTC, like at Audrey Grace. It stays at Audrey Grace because I work with Michelle will send me our notes and she'll say, I'm going to go put them in the green notebook. So they should be at the office of the RTC. The only time I think they might not be with placement might be if the child's in a psych hospital and has no placement to go to. Then the worker should have possession of it.
Okay. So check with the case manager at that RTC and they should have it. She also asked, are there school records available through the educational portal when they're in a RTC?
It really isn't an education portal. So no, it's the only thing we've got is what's in their passport. I mean, their notebook.
And I know in my case, I have a girl that's at the ranch in Gulf Lake, and I just have to go through the case manager to get the report cards and the updates. So it's probably the same for most RTCs.
Yes. And you should know too that if you feel your student in an RTC is not doing well at the placement at the school that's on campus or whatever, the worker has the right to request they attend public school.
Okay.
So if there is a charter school on campus, I mean, I think we work real well with the Arenda at the ranch, but in some of the bigger towns, if you don't feel the charter school or the on-campus school is what's meeting your child's needs, we can request that they be enrolled in public school.
Good to know. That's great. Then Wendy's question was about the distance for a school of origin. How far is a reasonable distance? You get that a lot, don't you?
Yes, and I think you just kind of have to use common sense on that. Like in Abilene, gosh, I need to find out. Somebody transported some of our kids that were in the shelter to Anson every day, so they could maintain their school of origin last year. And I didn't know that was happening until it was over. But I would say a common sense would be not longer than that. That's about 30 minutes. So you've got to look at, will my child be on the bus or will my child be driven in a private car? How long is a reasonable time for my child to be transported back and forth? And the way we look at whether they stay at their school of origin too is it in their best interest? If there are some factors where the children would not be safe from the parent remaining in that school of origin, then of course we would change schools.
Good. Okay. And then our next surrogate training will be in January. You'll be getting information about that, but Terry will be coming to do it for us again in January. So we'll have that coming up. And then, Mary Caton provided, it's Darla Swanson at Wiley. So you were correct.
Yes.
Okay, guys, other questions? If there's something that you want to ask, you can unmute yourself and ask that question.
I do have a question. I can't figure out how to put it in the notes, but who is responsible for inviting the attorney ad litem to the ARD meeting? Because ARDs I've gone to, the attorney acted like she didn't know anything about it. So as
really, that's probably up to the, Jane, it's probably up to the parent. I mean, if we've got some schools that work with us.
Right.
There are some schools that let me know that they're having ARD meetings, and then I invite the worker. I feel like it's the parent, but the parent should be telling the caseworker, and then probably the caseworker from there.
Would it be inappropriate for me to send an email out and just include the caseworker and the ad litem, just to say there's an ARD coming up at this time and date?
Very appropriate. Very appropriate.
I didn't want to butt in and do something I shouldn't do, but I feel like that I could probably help with that in my case.
Yes.
But I just wanted to make sure that was appropriate.
Yes. And we need to, the schools have 5 days notice to give to the parents. So we need to give an ad litem enough time, because if they go to court and the judge is quizzing them on stuff that they don't even know about, that would be very appropriate.
I have an ARD already set in November to review some retesting, so I can just go ahead and send an email out to those involved with him and just give them the date and time.
Perfect.
Right?
And if you'd put me on the list as well.
Okay, I will.
So,
And Deb brought up a good point about parents' involvement. Not all parents can attend if there's court orders where they can't have visitation. So we personally should not be including parents on that without checking with that caseworker, correct, Deb?
Exactly. There are a lot of, we're the managing conservator. So most of the time, unless we've got joint managing conservatorship with the parent's not going to be representing the child at the ARD. And unless orders or something is specific about that, they may not even participate in the ARD.
Yes. And then Anita had a question about just surrogate parents in general. A lot of our, the judge has asked that all of our advocates go through surrogate parent training.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, it gets us prepared. We can step right in. We can help. But she's not been called on any other cases. Do they just randomly go to the surrogate list if someone's needed on a case?
Okay, you can talk to Terry about that. Because
I'll bring that up with her.
That's a perfect Terry question, because I think the schools have a list of surrogate parents that they pull from. I went to an ARD one time, and the previous foster parent that I had co-trained with, she withdrew from being a foster parent, but she became a surrogate for the school district. So they all have a list of people that they call on. Typically each campus. So that's a perfect Terry question.
Okay, I'll ask her. And we've received calls up here at the last minute. And for those of you that are new that don't know, if we get a call to go serve as a surrogate parent on a case for a child and they're not one of our cases, we're not taking on a new case. It's a go and help make the best decision for that child, and they give you some information to review. So it's not another commitment on your end for another case. They just need someone independent that can come in and serve in that role to help make those decisions for that child.
And advocate for that child. That's right. That's
good.
Right.
Other questions, you guys? Anything?
Wow, we're going to get out early.
We are.
Well, I know y'all know so much about it, and I didn't feel like there was very many things that I would bring up that you weren't already familiar with. But the data that says that our kids are ranking lowest of any group in the state of Texas you know, if we could all work together to improve that's got to come up. We've got to improve our graduation rate, our dropout rate. And if you know of any of your kids that are doing the online training, if you could let me know, schooling, those kids seem to also be at risk because it seems like the online training is very challenging for parent and for the child. So
I agree. And it takes all of us.
yes.
I mean, we had one of my girls on my case, she is the first kid out of 7 to actually get a diploma. And she got her diploma in May, and the first one, and we celebrated that, you know, just that's a milestone.
Isn't that awesome?
We take that for granted, but I didn't realize we had the lowest rate in the state. That's
below homeless, Rebel, below homeless. I mean, that really bothers me, that we're not doing better with our kids. And I don't know why. I'd like to kind of, and I'm not saying that's Region 2 kids. I'm saying that's nationally. I think those are national statistics, but it's still very concerning. Our kids deserve better than that. But I know a lot of it is due to the number of moves, the runaways, them not going to school. You know, their biggest thing on their mind is aging out of care and not having CPS in their life. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, while they're thinking to see if there's any other questions, Deb, I'm going to get you to pick a couple of numbers for me randomly. If you'll pick a number between 1 and 30.
Oh, 1 and 30. 6.
Mary Caton.
And 18.
And 18 is Deb Mifflin, one of our brand new advocates. She just swore in today. So you two get our cool little stylus pens. And so these will be up here at the office with your name on them. And if you'll do another one for me, this is for a pen that goes on their lanyard. A little
okay. Let's try 22.
TJ Simmons, he gets a pen.
Yeah, I saw his name a while ago.
Yeah, he trained in June. All right, and then our last one is one of our mugs.
Okay, let's go with 8.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, number 8's not on.
Okay, how about 11?
11 is Miss Dixie Mabry. Dixie, you get a cup. Okay, guys. Well, do y'all have any more questions for Miss Deb before we end the training today?
Thank you all for having me so much and for all you do. Y'all make a difference, a big difference. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for saying that. And we truly value our partnership with you guys and the training that you provide. Are you going to send out what was the training that's on the 29th? What is that called?
It's going to be the Big Country Consortium meeting, but it's going to be highlighting drug information, be from 9 to 1.
And you'll send me the link to share with them?
Yes, ma'am. I will send you the link for sure.
That sounds very interesting. We had Mark Casada from the department. He's in Austin, and he's the drug use specialist. And he spoke to our group via Zoom back in June, and it was very informative, just talking about drug level testings. And so then this comes at it from the perspective of what they call the drugs on the street and what the kids might be experiencing or exposed to. Is that correct?
We hope so. And this is also a group that these kids can go to for help. So they cover all 30 of our counties in Region 2. So we're inviting the Brownwood Consortium and the Red River Consortium. So it's going to be a large group of people that'll call in for that training. But we're hoping that it's going to get us current on what to look for, what they're called, slang names, just anything that we can kind of educate ourselves on.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to participating in that. Well, guys, give Deb a round of applause and high fives. And show her you're live. Deb, thank you so much for coming again. We appreciate you very much. And guys, we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our next training. And I'll send out the link with this again later today. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
bye. Thank you all.